Secretary, call the roll. Romero, here. Romero, here. Huff, Alquist, Hancock, Liu, Maldonado, Padilla, Simitian, Wyland. Okay, we lack a quorum. I've checked with the Republican consultant. Without objection, we're going to go ahead and start with a subcommittee of one to reaffirm that one person can make a difference. And we are going to go ahead and start on time. Let's go ahead. We have author Solorio in the room. Please step forward. This is file item 2, AB 20. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Madam Chair, during these difficult times, we're all looking for ways to streamline government, to find savings in our government. I have a bill that does exactly that. AB 20 would save the state money, streamline contracting, and expedite important research. And it would do so by establishing a model contract between the state and two segments of our college system, the CSU and the University of California. And this is not approach. We've seen that since 1986, the federal government established model contracts to do research with universities around the country, and here in California we should do the same. In our research, what we found is that for the University of California, for example, to negotiate a contract with the federal government, that costs $600, but to negotiate with the state for a contract, it was $1,800. So it cost us 3 times as much to negotiate with ourselves here within the state than to negotiate with the federal government. This bill would save significant dollars just on the UC side alone, where we have dollars. We know that we would save $1,400 per contract for a total of $2 million in annual savings. And again, that's just the UC alone. It would also expedite how long it takes to negotiate a contract, because it often takes too long. This bill is supported by the University of California, and I also do want to compliment California State University and them knowing that it would be helpful for them as well. So I thank both the CSU and the UC. I believe I have representatives from both institutions here, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's hear. There is no opposition. This measure, in a somewhat similar form, passed through the House last year, I believe it was, and was vetoed in the last minute issues by the governor. But this bill certainly, it strikes us, especially in these budgetary times, not only in difficult fiscal times, but it's just good government. So I'd like to thank you for bringing this forward quickly. There's no opposition. Let's hear from representatives from the systems for your words.
Happy Chastain, University of California, in strong support.
Thank you.
Wes Larson, California State University. We want to thank the author for including the CSU with the latest amendments. As your analysis reflects, we've got a little over 1,100 projects that this will help us with. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to be added as a co-author as well. I think it's a good government bill. Any opposition? We didn't receive any. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, questions or comments from committee members? All right. We don't have a quorum yet, but the recommendation will be do pass as amended, correct?
No, just straight do pass.
Okay, do pass.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other authors? Okay, Senator Ducheney has asked me to present her bill without objection. If I can just present it from the dais, here. This is her measure. It is file item 1. Let me pass this over to my vice chair. Thank you. Members, this is SCR 34. It would honor the 40th anniversary of EOPS, which is the Extended Opportunities Program and Services. We know that EOPS was established in 1969. It has served over 2.5 million students at some 110 campuses in the community college. It provides academic and traditional support services. The resolution celebrates its heritage and its its significance. Senator Ducheney has brought this forward, and she, as you might understand, is tied up in Budget Conference Committee negotiations. She asked if I would present the bill. I absolutely have said yes. There is support from the Faculty Association of the California Community Colleges, and there is no opposition. So I ask for your consideration of this measure.
Any witnesses in favor?
Yes, Paula Munoz, COPS Association President.
Yes, Seminder, EOPNS student.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak on behalf of this?
Erica Romero with the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities in support of the bill.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other witnesses in favor? Do you have any statements you want to make about it?
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair and members, my name is Paula Munoz, COPS Director at Ventura College and President of the California Association of EOPS. We thank the legislature and the late visionary Senator Alfred Alquist, author of Senate Bill 164, for the establishment of EOPS. EOPS is a community college categorical program. It was born out of the legislature to fund systematically disempowered students. The legislative intent for EOPS was very clear: to provide services to students that are over, above, and in addition to what the college offers. This challenge brought to the community colleges, and more importantly, the students, new and innovative ideas and a diversity of staff and students. We have had to always be one step ahead. EOPS is a forerunner model for what are now community college institutionalized programs, such as tutorial services, transfer centers, basic skills courses, recruitment and outreach programs, and many more. Many of our EOPS students are making significant contributions in our communities. They are professionals, educators, business, entrepreneurs, elected officials, and much more. We have had a 40-year history of success and hope for our students. We thank you for all of your support throughout our 40-year history. It has been an honor to be entrusted to serve EOPS students. We are at your service. Peace and blessings to you, and thank you again.
Okay. Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Seminder Singh. I'm an EOPNS.
Speak a little closer to the mic because it's hard to hear.
Good morning. My name is Seminder, and I am an EOPNS student. First of all, I'd like to say it's an honor for me to be here today and to speak on behalf of EOPNS. A little bit about myself. I'm a Yuba Community College graduate, and I will be attending UC San Diego's honors program in the major of human biology in fall of '09. And I joined this program in fall of 2008. And this program gave me support and guidance at a time
Excuse
when
me just a moment. Hold that thought. We're going to go ahead and take a roll call because we have a quorum established, and that's a very important thing in this committee. Please call the roll.
Romero? Here. Romero here. Huff?
Here.
Huff here. Alquist? Hancock? Here. Hancock here. Liu? Liu here. Maldonado? Padilla? Here. Padilla here. Semidian? Here. Semidian here. Weiland? 6. We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you very much. Please continue, and I apologize for interrupting you.
No problem. Well, the EOPNS program is a program that supports many students like me who are victims of unfavorable circumstances. This program gave me support and guidance at a time when even my family was not by my side. The EOPNS counselors encouraged me to stay in school despite my financial hardships, gave me confidence to finish my transfer coursework within 1 year, and gave me the confidence and the motivation to once again take charge of the pre-medical organization I founded in 2006. This program's unrelenting support enabled me to turn my tale of woe into a success story. This program supports many students, like I said, that are victims of unfavorable circumstances and gives them the hope to continue with their education. Thank you for supporting EOPNS, and I hope that you continue to bestow every student with the opportunities that I have had in the past year. And please show everyone that California does take care of its students, and we can be #1 in education. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that testimony. And with the rest of you, witnesses and support, please come identify your name, any organization, and whether you're in favor or against. I'm presuming you're in favor of.
My name is Maricela Arce. I'm Dean of the EOPS and Care Programs at Yuba College, and I very much support this program.
Thank you. And if we could make room for the rest of the people, I think there's some more that want to come up and say something.
My name is Diane Delgado, and I am the EOP&S and Care Coordinator at American River College, and I fully support this.
Irma Rodriguez, EOPS Coordinator at Sacramento City College, and I do support this.
Andrea York on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges and the EOPS Association.
Thank you.
Dr. Jose Michel, Director of EOPS, Care at San Joaquin Delta College, in favor. Thank you.
Okay. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses against? All right. Any questions by the committee? Any comments? Okay, we have a motion. I would like to say something. You know, I hate to rain on this parade, and this is not a budget committee, but this program does cost money. $2.9 million, and when it started in 1969, it's now over $100 million, $104 million in 2005, 2006. And while the Chancellor's Office has said that it's demonstrated the students have performed comparably or better than other community college students, there's no data that demonstrates that. In fact, EOPS students have a lower persistence rate, lower grade point averages, fewer are deemed transfer prepared than the non-EOPS students. So there's a lot more that could be said along this. I think in these budget times, and again, this is not a budget committee, but we have to look at all these things and we have to prioritize our dollars. And while this is just a resolution asking for us to congratulate and appreciate for this and create a month, it's obviously a precursor to saying this is a great program, needs to continue to be funded. And I'm not ready to sit here as a member of this committee and do that, so I'm just going to abstain, and I'll let you know that ahead of time. But any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Huff. I just have to say that I have personally known young people whose lives have been changed by this program. I believe that it's programs like this that have been an economic engine for our state, that have made us a real place where we can look to develop a global economy and global society. And this is not a budget hearing. This is simply a hearing with a resolution before us to designate October as Extended Opportunity Programs and Services Month. I think that many of us are very, very supportive of this program and believe that it needs to be continued, it ought to be expanded. And our support, we're very concerned about the support for higher education in general in this state, in every branch of our higher education system. So I would actually like to ask Senator Duchesne, who is leading our budget committee right now, if I could be added as a co-author at an appropriate time.
Any other questions, comments? All right, please call the roll.
Before we do, can I just comment that I think it's important for us just to recognize the leadership of one of our colleagues, Senator Al Ahlquist, because it was actually through his initiative that he was the one that was moved by the calls from students to have greater educational opportunity, and it was his bill that actually established the EOPS program. I know Senator Ahlquist isn't quite yet in the room today, but I know if she were here, she would speak to his legacy, and we want to thank him and her for really allowing us to promote that further. So on behalf of Senator Duchesne, who is in budget conference negotiations, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you for that close. And by being up at the dais, I forgot you did have an opportunity to close. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. Huff. Alquist. Hancock. Hancock, aye. Liu. Liu, aye. Maldonado. Padilla. Padilla, aye. Simitian. Simitian, aye. Wyland. 5-0. It's out.
We should keep it on call so Senator Ahlquist can in.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We see Assemblymember Furutani in the room. This is file item 3, AB 37. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. Members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I'm pleased to present Assembly Bill 37, a bill that accomplishes something that in my mind is long overdue and what I consider unfinished business. AB 37 calls upon our higher education institutions to confer honorary degrees to individuals whose studies, not to mention their lives, were disrupted because of our country's unjust wartime policy during World War II. As a member years ago of the Los Angeles Unified School District Board of Education, I was able to confer the first high school diplomas on this group of people who also had their lives disrupted by being placed in concentration camps during World War II. That was codified by state law with Sally Lieber's Assembly Bill 781, which was passed in 2003. So what we started in Los Angeles became a statewide policy. Much like AB 781, this bill, AB 37, seeks to formally codify a practice and a policy in state law that unequivocally recognizes the importance of correcting an injustice that was motivated by a misguided executive order. I'm pleased to have the support of the Community College Chancellor's Office. I'm really heartened by the positive steps the UC system is taking to develop a system-wide policy that is consistent with AB 37's goals. And I'm also appreciative of the CSU system's neutral position on the bill, and I'm also very honored to have several of you be co-sponsors on this bill as well. Today with me we have two former community college students. Yes, community college students, Ms. Kayo Sato and Mrs. Kimi Yamaguma, who were forced to leave their studies as a result of Executive Order 9066. And Ms. Sato, if you could start. Oh, there she is.
Thank you. My name is Kiyo Sato, former junior college student, Sacramento junior college student. When my father left Japan at age 14 with his father, his mother's last words were, "Don't come back here, Shinji," as she struggled to feed her family. His father came for gold, but my father found in America a land of hope. We grew up with large portraits of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington looking down upon us in the bedroom. In 1937, he bought a 1932 Studebaker so that I, the oldest of 9, could drive to junior high school 13 miles into town. Slowly, the American dream was becoming a reality. Then Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941. I became an enemy overnight. We were ordered to take to the sheriff's office all contrabands, which included even cameras, flashlights, and long sashimi knives. We were placed under curfew from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. We were not allowed to travel over a radius of 5 miles from our homes without a permit. 3 agents searched our house, turning over mattresses, ransacking our closets and drawers. After the FBI investigation, our neighbor, Mr. Iwasa, committed suicide. Less than a month before our first year was over at Sacramento Junior College, the FBI took Sam Kumagai's father, leaving Sam no choice but to quit school to take care of his mother, his younger siblings, and their farm. Then hundreds of these posters, you are not old enough to remember them, but were nailed onto buildings, telephone poles, and along our country road. I was humiliated, embarrassed, and afraid, knowing that I was one of them. I didn't want to stop my Studebaker, jump over the ditch, climb up to the fence, and read instructions to all those of Japanese ancestry. It said, leave in 10 days with what each person can carry in a bedroll. This included all those with more than 1/16 Japanese blood. It included also 60 children out of orphanages. This meant that not a single cell would be left to contaminate our state. Once a Jap, always a Jap, said General John L. DeWitt. You will understand why we Niseis do not want to talk about this part of our lives. So many of us have gone to our graves without telling our children. Before I died, I felt that we owed our Issei parents to pass on their remarkable ways of facing life's challenges. We heard over and over again, kodomo no tameni, for the sake of the children. The Issei lost everything they owned, but the children were kept happy and secure throughout this experience. Kiyo's story, which is my book, was one of 3 books chosen by the Smithsonian for the Asian Pacific American program. In conclusion, it has been 67 years from Executive Order 9066 to AB 37. What will an honorary degree do on my resume at 86? That is not the point. The point is that we have our United States Constitution, which guarantees our right to redress grievances. AB 37 is not a bill just for a few of our Japanese American octogenarians still upright and breathing. It is another great history reminder for all of us from which we must learn. I want the whole world to know that eventually my America does the right thing. We ask that you give AB 37 your serious consideration. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Mrs. Yamagumo.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address you about my experiences during World War II. When President Franklin Roosevelt ordered all the Japanese people of all Japanese ancestry to be removed from the West Coast, we were just given a few weeks to get rid of our home furnishings and household goods and report to a central point. I was enrolled in the City College of San Francisco, and I had to leave in April of 1942, and we were bused to the Tanforan racetracks, which is now a shopping mall in San Bruno. We were fortunate that we were one of the last ones to leave San Francisco, and we stayed in barracks instead of the horses' stalls that the other earlier ones did. But being there about 3 or 4 months, the Army had constructed a camp in the desert of southern Utah, which they called Topaz. We were there about a year or two when the government asked us to encouraged us to leave and go east. So my sister and I went to Cleveland, Ohio, with $25 that the government gave us. Fortunately, I had been working for the Department of Agriculture in Utah, so I was able to be transferred to another federal agency in Cleveland. But my sister found employment in a defense factory there. And my brother, who had just received his state board examinations for the position of pharmacy, found employment at a Catholic hospital in St. Louis, but was shortly drafted from there and served on a hospital ship in the Pacifics. My widowed mother did not want to join us in Ohio because San Francisco was the only city she knew after she immigrated from Japan as a picture bride in 1910. But when the war was over and we were allowed to go back to California, my sister and I returned to San Francisco in 1946. I had always hoped and dreamed about finishing my college education, but because of financial and family situation, I was not able to do so. But when I heard that Professor Kawahara was recruiting, searching for members, senior former members that had students who had been going to the College of San Mateo, and I had heard that the University of Washington was conferring degrees to their former students. I wrote to the chancellor of San Francisco City College, and I was rewarded by being a part of their ceremony with the class of 2009 on May 22nd. And so it was quite a thrill for me to don my cap and gown and be on the stage and give a little talk to the graduates of 2009. So it was quite a thrill, and I urge that you let the former students of other colleges and universities to have this same opportunity of fulfilling their dreams 67 years later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Other witnesses, if you can state your name and your support for the bill.
Judy Sakaki, Vice President for Student Affairs at the University of California.
Thank you. Other witnesses?
Louis Kawahara, Adjunct Professor at the College of San Mateo.
Carol Hayashino, I work at Sacramento State, formerly at San Francisco State. I urge your support for the bill.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support, please step forward.
Members of the committee, I'm Mike McGee with the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. We thank the author for his leadership, and we're here to emphasize our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses?
Andrea York on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, and we're honored to offer support.
Thank you.
Judith Michaels, California Federation of Teachers, in support.
Mariel Tsukamoto, Florence Chapter, the Japanese American Citizens League, and I urge you to support this bill.
Thank you. Any other support for the measure? We did not receive formal opposition. Is there any opposition? Okay. Assemblyman Furutani, the committee had made recommended suggestions to modify the bill. You've indicated you prefer to keep the bill as is as you move forward in discussing this with others, and I'm prepared to allow that to occur. Can you talk a little bit, though, about why this bill is so important? And over the years, why could this not have been done already? It has been decades. And for me, I would just like to say, I know that Senator Liu, myself, Senator Huff, we all represent portions of the San Gabriel Valley. And I would imagine that the two of you have gone to the Pomona Fairgrounds, which we go there. It's a great gathering place. Assemblyman Furutani, I know that you've been there as well. But this was an assembly center.
Right.
This was an assembly center. So in the San Gabriel Valley, with the very rich history of Japanese Americans in the district that I represent and others in San Gabriel Valley, and the fairgrounds is a very stark historical symbol of what passed, not only through those grounds, but what passed in American history. And that chapter has not been concluded. Really, the bill that you bring forward today is a new ending to a very horrific time, I believe, in American history. And so I want to thank you, Assemblyman Furutani, for your passion, your commitment to writing a new chapter with a better ending than what we've seen. So if you can talk with us a little bit about why this hasn't happened before. I know there have been long-standing efforts, and where you think we can go by moving this bill forward today and making sure that, just as we've seen with our veterans who served in this country, the tribute that they have finally, long last, been awarded, what you expect we can accomplish by moving this bill further to the governor's desk.
Madam Chair, the way you put it, I think it's a nail right on the head. It's been a process of an unfolding story relative to history. And all these new chapters start exposing themselves relative to experiences, situations, and one great opportunity we have as elected officials is to be able to correct past wrongs. And in this context, I just put it under the general heading of unfinished business. I remember when we were conferring high school diplomas at Roosevelt High School, a senior citizen, this time was about 45 years after the event, asked me to lean down. She wanted to whisper something in my ear as the superintendent was handing her a diploma. And she said, "Gee, Warren, I sure could have used this 40 years ago." And as Ms. Sato said, I don't know what she's going to do with her degree at 86, but I think she could sure lecture. That's for darn sure. So it is a process of correcting past wrongs, but I think fundamentally it's a teaching moment. That's what it is. And this opportunity, as we deal with our institutions of higher education, as you were saying about speaking at San Francisco High School, Professor Kawahara to my right had a program at the College of San Mateo. Mrs. Hayashino had a program at San Francisco State. Different campuses have been doing it onto themselves, but until the government acknowledges it as an institution, it's just a bunch of good-minded people doing individual acts. In this way, it makes it a government issue whereby we look at it from the standpoint of an institution, not as individuals. So I appreciate your willingness to let the bill go forward as it is. We're sorting out some of the concerns, not relative to the substance of the issue, but concerns about relationships between the legislature and other bodies like the CSU system or the UC system, the community college system. But we've been having a great working relationship. Things have been getting done. We really want to keep an edge on this to move it forward. People have had 67 years to do this. They haven't. So we're pushing the envelope and making sure that this has the same passion that it needs to as a really vital teaching moment, I think, for the whole state and the country.
Thank you much, and I'd like to be added as a co-author.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions or comments? Senator Hancock?
Yeah, I would like to be added as a co-author too, Assemblyman Furutani.
Absolutely.
I think you referred to this as a teaching moment or something just a minute ago, and it made me reflect that I grew up on the East Coast, and until I moved to California in 1964, I had absolutely no idea about the Japanese internment. I was told about it by a Japanese friend of mine who alluded to it, and I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But it had never been taught in history of the Second World War or anything in the classrooms I'd been in. So I do think this is a very important step forward and a landmark, a marker in history, actually, so that we don't forget and we're not condemned to repeat.
Thank you, Lana.
Senator Liu?
No, I just wanted to thank Warren for bringing this to our attention. It is a teaching moment, and I'm astounded, Ms. Hancock, that you didn't know about this, but that's the kind of diversity that we have in this country, and I can relate the same thing about the Armenian genocide not being taught in our history out here in the West Coast. So I think all of these things, as we move to be more inclusive of everyone, that we know our histories are very complicated and but in need of recognition. So thank you again, Warren, for doing this, and I do move the bill.
Okay. And before we do, let's hear from Senator Alquist, and then we'll move the bill.
It's a very good bill and a topic that we certainly should have dealt with many years ago. As one who represents a large portion of San Jose and who also has a daughter-in-law who came from Japan, it's important that all people understand what really happened to see that things like this do not happen in the future. I do understand you're not taking amendments at this point, but should you in the future, I would love to be added as a co-author.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are some good reasons to take amendments, by the way. All right. Any other questions? We didn't see any opposition. Is there a motion on the bill? Oh, there is by Senator Liu. Assemblymember, you may close.
If we go back in time, there were only 2 UC campuses in the period we're reflecting on. There were only 4 CSU campuses at that time, and there were about 25 community college campuses. So when we look at the actual numbers, really we're talking about maybe 2,500 that would be affected by this bill, but then you need to put one other overlay, and that's how many are still alive. And that is a very small number within that group. So time is of the essence, correcting this past wrong. We have 2 very vital senior citizens that really eloquently shared the episode and the experience, and I humbly ask and urge and I vote.
And you just gave me one other thought in your close. That's why closings can be dangerous at times. But you mentioned those that are alive. I mean, I would even urge you to think about perhaps posthumously. They were in school. They did nothing. There is nothing wrong. They were students seeking the American dream. and their lives were interrupted. So I would urge you in going forward and to think about it as well, too, whether it's only for the living, but history is also about those who have come before us. So, all right, there's a motion on the bill. Secretary, call the roll.
Romero? Aye. Romero, aye. Huff? Aye. Huff, aye. Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye. Hancock? Aye. Hancock, aye. Liu? Liu, aye. Maldonado? Aye. Maldonado, aye. Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Semidian? Aye. Semidian, aye. Wyland? 8-0.
Is everybody here?
Except for Wyland.
Okay, it's 8-0. We have plenty of votes to get out of committee, but we'll keep it on call and lift all calls at the end of committee.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you very much. And congratulations.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, Assemblymember Adams. This is file item 4.
Wyland will not be here today.
File item 4. This is AB 167. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senators. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I am here to present AB 167, a bill that seeks to remedy a problem that has occurred in California with our foster care children. Specifically, those in the 11th and 12th grades find themselves in a situation where they're displaced from their homes for a host of public policy reasons and into a new school district where oftentimes the requirements of that school district are not consistent with the requirements of the district they left. As a consequence, they often find themselves in a position where they cannot meet the needs of the current school district and potentially unable to graduate. As a consequence of that, not only are they disenfranchised from their ability to effectively achieve their graduation status, but they potentially stand to lose their ability to collect aid through the foster care system because of the rules governing foster care dependency aid. And as this bill seeks to move forward, we ask that this committee consider the needs of not only the educational concerns of the state of California, but specifically those needs of the foster care children who find themselves, through no fault of their own, in a position that I think is largely untenable.
Thank you very much. The committee had made suggested amendments to you. Are you accepting those amendments?
We'd be happy to accept those amendments. We'd also like to accept the chair as a co-author, and we also like to thank Senator Liu for her co-authorship as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have witnesses in support. Let's go ahead and hear from the witnesses.
Tim Lynch on behalf of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors. We're the sponsors of the bill. As your analysis notes, it's substantially similar to a bill we heard last year that was vetoed by the governor. We've worked with his office, and we think recent amendments allay their concerns, and we look forward to your support.
Thank you. Others?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Kathy Sunderling with the County Welfare Directors Association, also in support. One of the biggest challenges that we face in the foster care system is helping these youth graduate high school, and especially doing so timely. They often have multiple placement moves. They go from either one school district to another, or as your analysis notes and the technical amendment addresses, even from one school to another in the same district can set them up with different high school graduation requirements. So this bill seeks to both provide flexibility for them to go ahead and do those requirements if they have time and can reasonably accomplish that, but also make sure that they're not penalized if through no fault of their own they cannot. We urge your support.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Michael Butler, California State PTA, in support.
Thank you.
Virginia Star Martin on behalf of Los Angeles Unified School District in strong support.
Other witnesses in support, please step forward.
Good morning. Wes Larson, California State University. We believe this will lead to more foster youth coming to CSU campus, and we ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Any others in support? We did not receive formal opposition. Let me just indicate I like the bill. Of course, I've asked to be included as a co-author. And although it's not for this bill, but I think that reading this bill and thinking about the issue also raised other school children in my mind, that under similar circumstances, we might also want to perhaps in the near future think about whether or not a similar policy might work for them. The ones that come to my mind most readily are students who may be in a juvenile hall or the Division of Juvenile Justice and then are returned to their school districts having successfully completed and wanting to have need. Children of military families within districts that move from one to another. It's also a category that we might explore. And then again, finally, children of migrant workers migrant children. We have 1/3 of the nation's migrant children in California, some 300,000 kids. These are migratory kids who do everything, but they end up in different districts. So I'm not asking you to put these in your bill, obviously, at this point. But as I read the bill, I thought about the children who, under very similar circumstances, might be affected, and it might behoove the committee to look at these children as well and wonder whether or not we might also want to move forward somewhat of a similar policy for these children. Certainly the foster kids, absolutely. I think we understand it, why, and I'd like to applaud you for bringing this bill forward. Any other questions or comments from committee members, or if there's a motion on the bill? The bill's been moved by Senator Padilla. Assemblyman Adams, you may close.
Thank you very much, Senators. I ask for your aye vote.
All right, thank you. Secretary, call the roll.
Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. Huff? Huff, aye. Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lou, aye. Maldonado? Maldonado, aye. Padilla? Padilla, aye. Smidian? Smidian, aye. Wyland? It's 8-0.
8-0, and I understand that Senator Wyland is not coming to committee today, so all members are here. That bill is out.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Okay, members, we have two bills on consent. These are file items 5, AB 239 by Assemblymember Brownlee, and also AB 794 by Hagman. Brownlee's is proposed consent, and Hagman's is proposed consent with amendments. Is there a motion on the consent items? Okay, moved by Senator Huff. Secretary, call the roll.
Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. Huff? Huff, aye. Alquist? Alquist, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lou, aye. Maldonado? Maldonado, aye. Padilla? Padilla, aye. Smidian? Smidian, aye. 8-0.
8-0. Those items are out. We have a number of items on call. Let's go ahead and lift the calls.
Okay. SCR 34.
First one is file item 1 by Senator Ducheney, SCR 34. Call the absent members.
Maldonado? Maldonado, aye. Wyland? Oh, that's it. So, Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye.
7-0. The bill is out. Next item is file item 2, AB 20 by Assemblymember Solorio. Call the absent members. Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion on the bill? Okay, moved by Senator Lou.
Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. Huff? We're on AB 20.
Aye. Solorio.
Huff, aye. Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lou? Aye. Lou, aye. Maldonado? Maldonado, aye. Padilla? Padilla, aye. Smidian? Aye. Smidian, aye. 8-0.
8-0. The measure is out. And the last item on call is file item 3.
Actually, the only absent one is Wyland, and he's not here.
Okay, so that was AB 37. We have the only one who wasn't here was Senator Wyland, but he is not coming to committee today, so the bill is out 8-0. That measure is out. All right. Then we have dispensed with today's education file in a very, I think, timely and orderly fashion. So thank you very much. We will now then go into our next item, and this is an informational item dealing with this is an informational hearing on the policy considerations of proposed agency consolidations. And let me just give members a little bit of background. As you know, per the direction of the Pro Tem, he has asked us to look at efficiencies in government, where we might consolidate, where we might reorganize, where we might abolish various governmental entities. And in listening to one of his comments earlier in one of his press conferences and statements, he had indicated, before we cut students, we should be looking at cutting the bureaucracy, cutting the administration. So I think it's with that spirit in mind that we come forward. Over the years, we have seen various proposals by especially the Legislative Analyst's Office in looking at, in particular, the California Post-Secondary Education Commission, along with the Student Aid Commission. And they have brought to the legislature various proposals by which we might think about consolidating and decentralizing some of these agencies. There's not full agreement on it, but they've brought forward proposals. We've seen the Budget Subcommittee, of which myself, Senator Huff, and Senator Liu serve on that committee, did hear under the Budget Sub, we heard these proposals, and in fact, under the Budget Sub, the proposals for reorganization and decentralization were approved, I think, on a bipartisan 3-0 vote. The issue was to basically cut to the chase and provide the services directly with the students on the campuses. We did that from the wearing the hat of the budget in particular, but there are also policy considerations, and we certainly heard concerns that were raised both by CPEC and by Student Aid Commission. So in so doing, and with the direction of the Pro Tem, we wanted to put together today this informational hearing to hear on the policy issues pertaining to the proposals before us. The charge to the committee will be to submit a letter to the Pro Tem and the Budget Conference Committee with respect to our evaluation of this and how we might proceed. So that's essentially the work of the day. There's not going to be a formal vote or action taken. It is informational, but we thought it's important for at least the Policy Committee to weigh in on whether we want to support the LAO's proposal, evaluate the Budget Sub, or if there's some other way that we might go. Again, we don't necessarily want to write the proposal in committee. That's not the purpose, but to think overall about this information. And there will be time following the conclusion of this committee hearing to also continue to provide input as we draft a letter to the Pro Tem acknowledging our general thoughts on this issue. We don't have much time. The conference committee is charging full speed ahead. We're aware of that, but it was important to bring it as a policy consideration for this committee. So having said that, let me thank you for being here. And we have with us today, let me ask, Senator Huff, do you wish to make any other comments? Okay. All right. This is getting interesting. I mean, we're agreeing on a lot of things these days. So. All right. We have the hearing broken up into two sections. The first section will deal with consolidation of CPEC and CSAC. The second one will deal with decentralization. Let's start with panel number one. Let me call forth Jeannie Oropesa from the Department of Finance to... You're not Jeannie?
No, I'm not. I'm Lynn Podesto filling in for Jeannie.
All right. Okay, those are big shoes to fill, remember. Okay, from the legislative analyst, Judith Hellman. We also want to call Diana Fuentes Michel, the executive director of the California Student Aid Commission. And you're not Diana either.
Ed Emerson, on behalf of Executive Director Michel.
All right.
Hi, Lynn.
Oh, I understand that she's not feeling well today, so we send her our best wishes for a full and speedy recovery.
Thank you.
And then finally, Karen Humphrey from California Post-Secondary Education Commission. And we do have more room up here as well, so feel free to use the both tables. All right, thank you for being here today. Let's go ahead and begin with the governor's from Department of Finance proposal.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Lynn Podesto with Finance. I do have some handouts I'd like everybody to have, so if the sergeant could help us out. Is there a sergeant?
Ed, I'm going to ask you to sit up at this because that way everybody can have their own microphone. And we want to encourage the presentation that we can have some dialogue amongst each other. That way everybody has a microphone. And you are with?
I'm with the Student Aid Commission. I'm more of the program answer your questions person.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, to begin, the administration has two proposals, as you're well aware. One is consolidation of the Student Aid Commission and the California Post-Secondary Education Commission into a new organization that has an advisory committee, and we believe that would achieve a $1 million savings in 9-10 if implemented promptly, and $2 million thereafter, assuming the January implementation. Decentralization of administration of the Cal Grant programs and financial aid to the higher ed segments. We believe that would achieve another $1 million savings in 9-10 and $2 million or more ongoing thereafter. Proposals are coupled, as you're aware. However, they are separable issues. and legislation has been drafted in RN form to accomplish this. The reasons for consolidation, the key goal here is a consolidation proposal is to achieve greater efficiency and economy of scale by eliminating operational redundancy, which includes 2 commissions and supporting staff, 2 executive directors, 2 administrative and support staffs, legal, accounting, budgeting, IT, government relations, etc., and 2 sets of deputies, supervisors, and support staffs. Decentralizing the Cal Grant program and financial aid provides further reason for consolidation of 2 small agencies. Past budget deliberations have raised doubts about the need for CPEC, and I know that's some discussion on that in your agenda. And the Governor's Performance Review also recommended consolidating these organizations. There's a number of details here. I will skip those, but we can certainly go back to them if there's any questions about it, and then also talk about the reasons for decentralization. The key goal there is to better serve students.
Wait, on the decentralization, let's hold on that because we want to separate them. Let's just deal with consolidation at this point.
Then I'll hit the details here, if you don't mind.
Yes.
All current duties and responsibilities of the 2 agencies would be transferred to a new organization. Call it what you will. We call it the Higher Ed Planning, Accountability, and Financial Aid Advisory Committee. The committee would be advisory in nature, would be composed of 15 members, which include Senate Assembly, governor's appointees, representatives of all the segments, students, president of the Board of Education, and finance. The director would appoint an executive director and a deputy who would report to the Secretary of Education. Executive director would have the authority to organize the operations, identify staffing needs for the respective functions, declare surplus staffing as warranted. Existing space leases and data systems would become the property of the new entity, allowing for further economies to be realized. Personnel from the 2 agencies would be transferred into the new organization, retaining all civil service rights. The new agency would retain regulation authority, accountability, data management responsibilities for Cal Grants, including ensuring that Cal Grant funding is used appropriately through reconciliations and audits, coordinating annual Cal Grant cost information for budgeting purposes, maintaining centralized databases to track awards of students and high school GPAs for use by the segments in the decentralized administration of the program. And then on the back, we've got some responses to questions that we have heard. Maybe we can pick out some of those. I can go over those right now related to the consolidation. We've heard that CPEC needs to remain an independent organization outside of the administration to perform nonpartisan policy recommendations. Our response to that is the advisory committee involves all the stakeholders.
If you could speak directly into the mic, it's a little bit hard to hear you.
Yeah. The question is, should CPEC remain an independent organization outside of the administration related to nonpartisan policy recommendations? We believe the advisory committee that's involved in our proposal involves all stakeholders. Thus, an independence is retained in policy recommendations. As you know, CPEC doesn't implement policy. They make recommendations. And certainly with all the stakeholders there, you can be assured that policy recommendations would have the input of all affected stakeholders. CPEC's responsibilities will remain the same, and staff can continue to complete their publications. I think a larger question is, however, whether the CPEC's current independence warrants a $2 million cost to support a separate commission, highly paid executive officer, given the state's current fiscal condition. And then the similar question, CSAC should remain an independent commission and should not be under the direct control of the administration. We believe financial aid policy is defined in statute. Therefore, the Student Aid Commission carries out an executive branch function in administering those programs. The LAO agrees that no significant purpose is served by the current independent nature of CPEC. There's been some question about why the new organization's executive director should report to the Secretary of Education. Our belief is that the new organization should have some oversight within the executive branch. Okay,
And again, I think you need to physically move the microphone and speak directly into it, please, and maybe pull it up closer.
I apologize once again. The thought is, why should the new organization's executive director report to the Secretary of Education? Our belief is the new organization should have oversight within the executive branch for accountability purposes. Reporting to the Secretary of Education is a logical chain of command in this respect. And then the idea of having an advisory committee. What's the point of that? We believe the committee allows, again, for input from all stakeholder groups to ensure that all perspectives are represented when implementing statutorily authorized changes or new programs on financial aid matters, or for advising on policy that I talked about earlier with respect to the responsibilities that the CPEC currently performs. And then there's been some discussion about the savings being overstated. We don't believe so. The $2 million annualized savings, approximately $400,000 of that can be achieved by eliminating duplicative commissions, commission support staff, and an executive director. Eliminating one executive director alone would save approximately $200,000.
Can I ask, what are the salaries of the 2 executive directors?
Let me see if I have that. Ed, do you have that?
There's been a lot of discussion about executive compensation these days, so I'd just be interested in knowing what the salaries are.
I can provide mine. Mine is $140,000, reduced by the furlough to $127,000.
Okay, so base is $140,000. And again, if you can identify yourself once again for the record.
Karen Humphrey, Executive Director of CPEC.
CPEC.
That also is a significant reduction from my predecessor's salary.
And the predecessor's salary was?
About $167,000.
Okay. Yeah, the figures that we had in building the 910 budget based on the prior incumbent in that position was $168,300, and for the Student Aid Commission, about $143,000.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's what's budgeted.
Continue.
Well, I just wondered what the total number of positions that would be eliminated is. I didn't see that anywhere.
For consolidation, we believe that you could make reductions of between 25 and 30 positions.
Okay. Continue.
Okay. Other staffing duplications, accounting, budgeting, technology, and governmental relations would save over $1 million. And then there's a necessary operating expense and space costs that we calculated up to $500,000. And all the rest of my comments relate to the decentralization proposal.
Okay, well, hold on that.
So that's it.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from the LAO's office.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Judy Hyman from the Legislative Analyst's Office. As you've heard, the Governor has proposed consolidating the California Post-Secondary Education Commission and the Student Aid Commission. We believe the budgetary savings that are possible from this would be minimal and thus should not be the basis for your decision on this proposal. As the Chair mentioned, there are important policy considerations for you to consider regarding whether higher education coordination and administration of financial aid programs should be under the executive branch. The table on page 2 of my handout gives you a quick snapshot refresher on the 2 commissions. As you can see, CPEC's purpose is to provide planning and coordination of the state system of higher education. There are 16 commissioners representing the public, the higher education segments, and students, and there are 7 different appointing authorities, including the Governor, the Senate Rules Committee, the Speaker, the governing boards of the 3 public higher education segments, and the Board of Education. There are 21 authorized staff positions, and there's about $2 million in operating funds and about $9 million that's distributed as grants. CPEC's main responsibilities are to serve as the state's primary clearinghouse for higher education information, to review and make recommendations on proposals for new academic programs, sites, and campuses, as well as policy proposals, and to administer federal programs. The Student Aid Commission administers the state's student financial aid programs. It has a commission of 15 with 3 appointing authorities and 146 staff. The much larger staff reflects its role in administering multiple financial aid programs. There is about $13 million in operating funds at the commission and more than $900 million in student financial aid funds. And then in a completely separate pot, there's $1.5 billion in funds related to the federal student loan program, and those are administered through CSAC's auxiliary organization, Ed Fund. The primary responsibilities of the Student Aid Commission are to administer Cal Grants and other state financial aid programs and to provide financial aid information and outreach.
Okay, let's stop for a moment. This is a very valuable chart. Any questions or comments? Senator Huff?
Could you explain what the $8.5 million in distributed as grants in the CPEC program? You say there's $9 million federal funds, of which $8.5 million are distributed as grants.
Karen?
Karen Hooper, CPEC. The actual amount is a little over $8 million in grants distributed and about $400,000 in administrative costs, which are used to pay not only the salaries of CPEC staff who support it, but also all the costs of enlisting readers, holding meetings around the state, monitoring the sites, all of the various costs associated with a competitive grant process. So we actually put out a little over $8 million a year in new grants. They're awarded to post-secondary institutions, four-year colleges and universities in partnership with local education agencies. They support teacher professional development. Our focus has been on doing the most effective professional development and also evaluating it to assess its impact. So we have probably close to 1,000 teachers who are being served currently in the project, and of course many thousands of students who are affected by their work.
And let me follow up on one question. The 21 staff positions for CPEC and the 146 for CSAC, where are they physically housed? Where are they?
CPEC is in a smallish suite of offices at 8th and L Streets.
So here in Sacramento?
Here in downtown Sacramento.
Okay, and CPEC?
CSAC.
We're in beautiful Rancho Cordova.
All 146?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Any other questions on this chart? Okay, let's move forward.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit on some of the details that Mr. Podesto gave you about the consolidation proposal. The proposal would eliminate CSAC and CPEC, both the appointed bodies and the staff agencies, and then create a new department under the executive branch. The governor would appoint the director and deputy director. Currently, the directors of the two commissions are appointed by the commissions.
And are these subject to rules confirmation then? Or
no, they are not. The proposal would create an advisory body, as Mr. Podesto mentioned, but it would be advisory only and would have no formal authority. There's language in the proposal stating that the director of the new entity should give great weight to the recommendations of the advisory body in administering the programs, but it would have no formal authority.
The advisory bodies, would they receive per diem?
Yes, I believe under your proposal they'd receive the same. Sort of
whatever we have for per diem? Okay. Maybe you can just give us that information.
I don't know that we specified that in the statute.
There are some savings from merging the executive and administrative operations and reducing the number of executive directors and the number of appointed commissioners. But to achieve the full savings, the $4 million annualized, or $2 million, I guess, for this part of the proposal, the new department would have to reduce its programmatic activities and do less of something, such as research, program review, et cetera, as far as we can tell. So there are several policy questions. This raises several policy questions for you to consider. One, is independence necessary for the Post-Secondary Education Commission? In our view, CPEC is fundamentally a policy board. Its primary responsibilities involve evaluating programs and policy options and advising the governor and legislature. And that does require independence. You could reasonably be concerned about ideological or partisan bias of the advice you receive if it's under direct executive control. Mr. Podesto mentioned that you would still have a broad-based advisory board, but the staff that's actually developing the recommendations and doing the research and putting information before the advisory board would be under direct executive chain of authority. Some of the duties that CPEC currently performs could probably be done reasonably well under the executive branch, such as the federal program administration, the data collection and data management, but I would say not data analysis. Those could be appropriate executive branch functions. The same question applies to the Student Aid Commission. Is independence necessary for its performance? And CSEC's primary responsibilities are to administer programs that are governed by statute, and that's fundamentally an executive function. So in our view, that could appropriately be performed by an executive branch department. Financial aid advocacy, which is something that CPEC does in addition to providing information and outreach. They advocate for financial aid programs, as they're doing now for the Cal Grant program. That is something that CSEC can do because it is independent from the executive branch that's actually proposing the cuts. So that function, advocacy, probably would require independence if that's something you wanted to see maintained. Another question is, would consolidation improve performance for CPEC? There have been some concerns about CPEC's ability to perform its responsibilities, but these haven't been related to its organizational structure so much as other factors that have been identified, such as an intrinsic conflict between its advocacy role and its watchdog role, insufficient prioritization of its multiple functions, lack of alignment between its responsibilities and its resources. So rather than addressing these concerns, it seems to us that consolidation would actually further reduce CPEC's value to you because of the loss of independence and the proposed reduction in positions. The same question applies to the Student Aid Commission. Would consolidation improve its performance? And we see no reason that financial aid program performance, the actual administration of the financial aid programs, should change under the proposed structure. The advocacy and outreach functions would likely decline. And there have been a number of conflicts in recent years between the Student Aid Commission and the board of its auxiliary organization, and consolidation under the executive branch would probably resolve those conflicts, although that's probably a short-term issue. The auxiliary is likely to be sold or disposed of or disappear within the next year or two.
Senator Ahlquist.
I was a member of CPEC for 2-3 years before I was elected to the State Assembly. And I've always believed that CPEC provides a service that is not provided by any other entity. And it is because of the confluence of people coming together from all the different segments and talking with each other and being objective and not being under a Democrat or Republican governor, doesn't matter which party it is, but CPEC needs to be independent in order to do the kind of data analysis and policy suggestions that we in the legislature and other entities really rely on. I'm sure there's a way to, on another issue on the budget side, to, if necessary, to cut the budget a little bit, but to put it under any administration does away with the objectivity. And one comment that was made is that under an administration, the advisory body would have great weight. Well, what does great weight really mean? Or what does accountability really mean when you have somebody kind of telling you the way things should really be? That is not independence, and I'm against this piece of the proposal of doing away with CPEC's independence.
Okay. Senator Huff, and again, too, we're going to hear from everybody as we go forward. But the one thing I would ask people to recommend, on the table still is slashing and cutting Cal Grants. So part of this as well, too, is we're going to cut. I mean, we are going to cut. So I would just ask everybody, keep this in mind as we cut, where we cut, who we cut, and then, of course, obviously, does it make sense? Because these are very hard and difficult years. Senator Huff.
Yeah, so the question you raised was, is independence necessary for these two agencies? And the answer to that seems to be, what is their role? If they're advising, then perhaps it is. But if they're just collecting data and crunching numbers and letting somebody else come up with that advice, then the answer is no. And my question to you as a nonpartisan advisor is, why can't you fold the advice portion into what the LAO is doing so that these other agencies are not giving that advice? We don't need multiple layers of advice flowing out, because they often conflict each other anyway, and then you come down to some political decision being made. So why can't the LAO provide this advice?
We do provide advice, as you know, on higher education policy issues. That's one of the areas that we cover. CPEC, on the other hand, is entirely focused on higher education and thus is able to do some more in-depth work. For example, the recommendations they provide on new programs and new sites for campuses is quite an involved research. It involves an extensive research function that's really beyond our resources at this point to conduct.
Okay, but that's a physical research, crunching numbers, doing whatever else that they could still do. But as far as taking that data and then making a non-biased, or non-political is probably a better way to say, non-political decision for the advice, couldn't you work hand in glove with a scaled-back entity like that is still doing the specific data collection they need to do, but, pulling out that advice component of what they're doing now?
Yes, although I would say that that role of making recommendations, using that example of new programs, really involves developing extensive knowledge about existing programs, about the needs of the state in a particular area, about consulting with economic offices, and putting together quite a bit of information, which does involve some judgment calls. It's not pure number crunching involved in that analytical work. So I guess there are currently 8 or 9 research positions, seven research positions at the CPEC. At LAO, we have one person who's dedicated to community colleges, one who works with University of California, one on CSU, and also cross-cutting issues across those. But it's a different level of depth, I think, that we would be able to provide.
All right, thank you.
Senator Liu.
When I was in the Assembly, I've had a long history of having a love-hate relationship with CPEC. And I'm not sure where I stand now, but the independence part, or I should say the what California really needs in higher education is a body that is perhaps stronger than this particular body, and ask different kinds of questions about where we should go in the future, has more economic analysis, et cetera, about job creation, and reinforces the help that legislators need to provide that kind of information so that we can provide the rules and regulations as how this should be governed. We have decimated CPEC over the years through budgetary constraints, and I feel in terms of relating this institution to other states, we are a poor cousin to what is going on with other independent higher education bodies elsewhere. And we really, if this state is serious about moving forward in its economic growth, we really need to have a stronger institution that would be independent, tell us exactly what we need to do in our higher education segments, so in order we can provide the workforce to move forward. We just have prided ourselves in what we have accomplished, and we have fallen farther behind just being satisfied. So, I would, if I had my druthers, this would be an organization that would reset the bar and reset their mission statement, and the legislature should support something like this to reach further into just providing information about whether or not just to create another university here, there, or whatever, because we have a huge investment in higher education that is slowly slipping, and it needs to be really stimulated to be a greater, where we used to be. And very concerned about the future of California when we talk about pulling back and reorganization and stuff like that. Our minds need to be clearer about where we are headed and what the vision is going forward. So for now, Karen, I appreciate your independence, but I do think that we need to relook at your function. And and I know these are hard times, but hard times are times for creativity and rethinking about how we do deliver services. And so that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Senator Hancock.
Thank you, Senator Romero. Actually, that was a very interesting perspective from Senator Liu, who I know did chair higher education in her time in the Assembly. I'm coming from the perspective right now, I think, of agreeing that were we actually committed to running a world-class public higher education system in this state, we would be beefing up these organizations. We would be ratcheting up the goals and the staffing and the capacities and the mission of groups like CPEC. We are not. Right now, we're in the process of retrenching and hoping that we can retain something of what was built in the past. And what I'm trying to understand in this discussion is given that tragic situation that we're in, a legacy none of us wanted, I think, when we were elected to come here, what is the best role for these agencies, or is there a role anymore if we're just trying to keep the teachers in the classroom? I know that I've had just individual faculty members talking to me about how there are no graduate student fellowships in the humanities anymore, how basic teaching and learning and facilities at the university are falling apart. And what I've been trying to get a handle on is exactly what are we buying with these few millions of dollars that we're putting out. And when you mentioned advice on new programs and new facilities, my thought is, what new programs and new facilities? And if we're not going to have any for the foreseeable future, maybe we do keep simply a shell of a function with the hope that when there is a legislature and an administration that choose to recommit to higher education in this state, we won't have to start from scratch. And if Ms. Humphreys or any of you have examples of what advice was given to the legislature that we used, quite frankly, because sometimes we don't even use the LAO as much as we should, or the Little Hoover Commission, or what specific things in this climate would be taken from us, I would appreciate knowing it. Otherwise,
Senator Hancock, I think those are excellent points. Let's have them address this question in their testimony. Okay. LAO, any other comments? And let me just put out one other question as well. I did actually was interested by the comment from Senator Huff as to whether or not this might be an appropriate function for the LAO. The other thing that I would put out too is perhaps might it be something that we vest in under the University of California? I mean, I don't know. We have research institutes, et cetera. So I would just put those out to further complicate the discussion.
Let me just, because I did want to throw that out because you might answer that. For example, new programs or new facilities, should we ever have any? Why couldn't the UC Office of the President or the Chancellor's Office of the Community College or CSU do that research and present it to the legislature?
Yeah, and I concur with that. Senator Padilla.
Just to continue to pile on here, I guess. I appreciate everything that's been shared, merits, arguments, both for and against some of the proposals relative to consolidation. Everybody seems to be focused primarily on efficiencies to be gained from a bottom line perspective. How much money can we save here? Which is, not a bad conversation to have. But Well, I only heard a little bit. I want to acknowledge that I heard some, but I'd love to hear more when it comes to not just the effectiveness of our program delivery, achieving the mission that each of these entities has independently, let alone in a combined entity, but really performance measures and the accountability piece, because we can consolidate all we want, be efficient all we want, save a ton of dough, but if we're not achieving the mission and not measuring that success and not being held accountable for either meeting it or not, then I think we're going to be penny wise, pound foolish here.
Okay, Elio, if you'll summarize, and then let's get over to CPEC and CSAC.
Yes. We list on page 5 of the handout a number of alternatives that you may wish to consider, alternatives to the proposed consolidation. For example, retaining one or both commissions, and as Senator Ahlquist and Senator Lieu suggested, looking at ways to make them more efficient or more effective, changing the composition or appointment process for the commissions. Senator Padilla, you raise a very good point. There are not currently clear goals and objectives for higher education in California. You have twice passed legislation to establish some, but it has not been enacted. But that would be an important step that would allow CPEC to be more effective in carrying out those state goals. Other changes you can make to the financial aid programs or the commissions. And then I guess I would say, as Senator Hancock mentioned, perhaps you may decide to just leave a shell of a structure and come back to it in the future. We would suggest that if you do that, for example, consolidate or eliminate one or both of the commissions as a short-term measure with an intent to return and restore it in the future, that you make it very clear that that is your intent with the sunset date certain. And then lastly, 2 more policy questions for you to consider. One, we've already talked about what's the value of an advisory committee that has no power. And also, if there is to be a restructuring, should you consider including the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary and Vocational Education in the mix?
Excellent points. All right, let's move forth then to hear from the Student Aid Commission. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Ed Emerson. I'm the Chief of Federal and Policy and Programs at the California Student Aid Commission. And on behalf of Executive Director Diana Michelle and the Commission, I welcome the opportunity to speak today on consolidation right now. The proposal to merge 2 commissions, I do need glasses, to merge 2 commissions with totally different functions is not the product of thoughtful analysis, but an effort to make good the governor's promise to blow up boxes in state government, irrespective of whether any money is saved or greater effectiveness is achieved, and creates a new agency under the governor. This proposal would eliminate the state's only independent commission, whose paramount goals are to serve students and to increase access to higher education in our state. It would turn the financial aid decision-making process over to completely financial considerations, which came up with the great idea of eliminating the Cal Grant program in its entirety recently. While the Commission is open to working with the legislature on proposals aimed at better serving students, we urge you to reject this proposal. The proposal would not only eliminate the Commission, it would eliminate the public deliberative process for making decisions affecting access and affordability for California students. It would put that policymaking function behind closed doors and into the hands of political appointees who will not put students' needs first. It would eliminate transparency, independence, and accountability in student financial aid when higher education accessibility is more important than ever to ensure the future economic strength of our state. None of the functions currently performed by the Commission is duplicative of any work by the California Post-Secondary Education Commission, and consolidating the 2 commissions would not eliminate the need for continuing our work. It is important that the Student Aid Commission remain as the state's only independent public voice for students in making and implementing financial aid policy. It is also important to retain CPEC's expertise and participation in policy debate. In the heat of the budget battle, it may appear as if consolidating 2 agencies may make sense. This does not, nor would it save a single penny. Thank you.
Thank you. CPEC?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. I'm Karen Humphrey, Executive Director, and I'm going to, many of the points that I was going to make have really been stated very clearly here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to hear questions and comments by members of the committee. So I'm going to try to just pick a couple of small things that haven't been said and then try to respond to some of the questions and things that have been placed out here. One small thing, there indeed continue to be program reviews. We had about 20 to 25 this year. New campuses there is some state bond money that is still being used. So that function, I think, has certainly reduced from prior years. I don't know that it will go away entirely. The one thing that hasn't really been noted about what CPEC provides, and this is really the best example of a direct service to the people of California, is our website gets about 40,000 hits a day, about 15 million a year. They come from many from legislative staff and staff in state agencies, many from parents and students who are looking to our college guide, many from independent researchers and others. So the use of it has expanded really dramatically, and it is the most comprehensive source of data about all post-secondary education in California and its linkages to K-12 that you can find. One other key function that we do on a regular basis, and I really appreciate Senator Hancock's question about what have we done. I can't pretend that CPEC can wave a magic wand and solve the state's budget problem, particularly about higher education. What we have done is consistently work with the legislature and the governor's office on budget issues. We have consistently tried to provide advice about where cuts, if they are necessary, would not undercut the basic infrastructure of what is still, I believe, the world's finest post-secondary system, but one that is severely threatened and in very great danger of being lost. And given the research reports that have been done consistently, including some of our own, and we have focused very heavily on workforce development in recent years, the state actually needs to be looking at how it can expand, re-energize, and make sure that system in its entirety, from community colleges through the UCs, and the private institutions that are really encouraged and inspired, I think, in many ways, to meet the challenges of California in coordination with those public systems. We need to make sure they can do the job. The need for college-educated people is rising rapidly in all levels of post-secondary, and we have no chance of doing that this year, and we may not be able to do it for a number of years. In one sense, what CPEC's need may be is to help the state identify the impacts of cuts and identify the areas of restoration when there's an opportunity to do that. I think it was also a very important point. We're not really clear about what the state believes should be the goals of higher education, the purpose of higher education, and what the state's commitment is to it, because that discussion hasn't really been held in recent years and clarified. We have the tools. CPEC's database has the tools for assessing performance and for helping the legislature and the governor see where the strengths of post-secondary education are and where the weaknesses are, and look around the nation at ways to help these systems do a very good job even better. But at the moment, we're in a vacuum, and so I think we would welcome the legislature participating and inviting us to participate along with all of the other stakeholders in a discussion of what do we want from post-secondary education. And I think we want to be sure that we have the system that we need to support not just the economy, but the quality of life in this state in the very best way possible. CPEC is a very small entity in relation to the billions of dollars you're spending. We are, at the moment, we're actually down to 17 people. We have very little administrative overhead. There's one executive director. The deputy director runs the entire research and policy shop and does much of it himself, including the eligibility studies that we routinely do every 3 years, and that I also believe would be very difficult for any other entity to take over. Our program and policy reviews really can't be done by one of the entities. I don't think any of the three systems would agree with their programs and facilities being subject to the advice of another system. So clearly there are ways we can make changes, and I do not want to argue that there are not ways that we can make changes. Clearly there would be ways that CPEC could probably further economize its own operation. I would suggest that to reduce it to nothing but a shell would be to lose the expertise of a number of people who've been there for a number of years and some new people who are really gaining that expertise very fast, and it could potentially lose the data expertise. We have 3.5 people who do data management. So, pardon me, 4.5. So I think that we need to think very carefully about CPEC's policy role. I believe that the master plan update is an ideal place to do that kind of discussion. Wherever you choose to do it, we would like very much to look at that, to identify the things the changes in CPEC could be helpful. As a new executive director, I'm working with our staff on trying to see how our product might be reshaped, how our questions might be reshaped, so that we are more useful and more helpful to the entire body politic in California. So I assure you of our interest in that. I believe both of these agencies, as independent agencies, serve a very great public need representing all of the people of California. We have very different missions and functions. There would be some savings, but the loss, I believe, of this consolidation would be far more costly to California in the long run. And so I would encourage you to think very carefully about any steps that you might take and share the opposition of CSAC with this consolidation.
Questions or comments from committee? All right, let's move it. Thank you very much. Let's move into the second area, which is the decentralization component. Let's begin with finance to give us an overview of the finance of the decentralization proposal.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I will try to go slower and speak into the microphone.
Thank you.
Okay. The reasons for decentralization. The key goal here is to better serve students by creating, if you will, a one-stop shop for all financial aid needs at the colleges and universities, where all the other financial aid is administered and packaged. A decentralized process would be less confusing for students because they would not have to communicate with both the college and the Student Aid Commission when trying to determine eligibility and their total financial aid package. Keep in mind, a financial aid package is completed by the college, and the Cal Grant is only a component of that package. The Cal Grant award letters to students from the Student Aid Commission only address the Cal Grant eligibility. They do not reflect the availability of institutional and federal aid that can also help make the decision to attend a particular institution. Decentralization authorizes institutions to determine student Cal Grant eligibility, similar to what they're already doing with the Pell Grant program, for instance. Cal Grant funding would be provided to the institutions directly, and the successor organization to the Commission would be responsible for ensuring the funds are used appropriately. As you're aware, the Education Roundtable is in full support of the decentralization movement. And a study by CPEC in 2003 recommended that the Cal Grants be decentralized, as you're probably aware. Decentralization is also more cost efficient for both the state and the segments of higher education, eliminating the double handling of student awards, eliminating the process for making advance payments and reconciliations throughout the year, and reducing inquiries from a confused public created by a separate agency involved in making the awards. Some of the details on the decentralization. In our proposal, all three of the major segments would each award and administer all new entitlement and renewal awards, that's the A and B high school and community college transfer entitlements, for students attending their institutions. And then under our combined proposal with consolidation, we have the Chancellor administering the competitive program, the Cal Grant C, and awards to private institutions due to economy of scale considerations and a need to retain a centralized approach for these programs as they're currently statutorily constructed. Alternatively, these functions could be retained by a new entity, absent consolidation, or CSAC absent consolidation. In our proposal, the new director may allocate the Apple authorizations in specific amounts to segments to help increase the utilization. As you may be aware, a number of awards don't get utilized every year. The new director could contract through interagency agreement the data functions and authorize institutions access to all necessary information as determined to be most effective. The new director could contract through interagency agreement the administration of the specialized financial aid and outreach programs, or retain them as determined to be most effective. Finance could directly allocate funding to segments to eliminate the double handling of funds distribution, with periodic reporting and reconciliation by the new entity to adjust appropriations to meet actual costs. Institutional audits would be done through the Office of State Audits and Evaluations to ensure financial integrity. And then there are a number of questions that have popped up, and I'm going to turn the page to my concerns and responses section. Costs to convert to decentralization have not been figured in the savings. Well, at least $2 million in annualized savings we believe can be achieved by further reductions in program, administration, technology, staffing at CSAC for determining eligibility and administering the grant awards, processing the advance payments and reconciliation of the segments monthly, and responding to the numerous student inquiries. UC and CSU have indicated minor one-time programming costs that are absorbable and ongoing savings in eliminating redundancies in dealing with the Student Aid Commission. Community colleges have indicated that minor one-time programming costs, provided that a centralized GPA repository is maintained, which will allow them to make all eligibility determinations and thus make awards. In terms of how the new committee structure would ensure Cal Grant funding is used appropriately, all responsibilities for maintaining the integrity of the Cal Grant program remains with the new committee by retaining regulation authority over the programs. The committee will be responsible for reconciling awards with the funding provided. Audits of institutions will continue to be performed. Central tracking of all awards will remain with the committee. And people have pointed out four-year institutions receive the high school transcripts and can determine GPAs that are unique to the Cal Grant program. However, the community colleges may not have the high school transcripts. Well, I think the solution to that is the committee would continue to receive the grade point average information from the high schools and make that information available to the community colleges. Question is, why should the chancellor administer the competitive program? Approximately 70% of the competitive Cal Grant awards, as currently structured in statute, are awarded to community colleges. Therefore, it's reasonable for the chancellor's office to administer this program, since it already has a working relationship with the districts that would administer the awards. Why should the chancellor's office administer the awards to private institutions? Now, first, funding cannot be directly appropriated to private institutions. Secondly, it provides an economy of scale with the competitive program administrative function. And with that, I'll let that go.
Okay, thank you. Senator Ahlquist had a question.
A couple questions. The first one is, in reading the material, it took about 5 minutes to read through everything. And so without looking at the material, and I would preface it by saying, if something is really simplified and made more efficient, one can usually explain it in about 5 sentences, or maybe 3 sentences. So if you could just tell us in 3 or 4 sentences what this proposal really is, what it really does, and how it saves money.
The decentralization proposal saves money by eliminating double handling.
I guess, first of all, you should tell me what the proposal does. Let's don't talk about the fiscal piece yet. So what does this proposal offer us?
What it offers
What does it do? What does it do?
It offers students a central point of contact and knowledge about what it would cost to attend the institution, considering all forms of financial aid.
What is that point of contact?
That is at the institution of higher education for which they've applied to attend.
So everything would be done through
the campus financial aid office.
And how is that possible with all the pieces that need to occur? How would that occur? I mean, I remember 3 or 4 years ago, the institutions were not even getting the information about the students. About 20% of the time, they were not even getting the information.
I'm not sure I understand
I'm
that.
just saying, simplify it. Tell me exactly. So it's through the point of contact of the institution. And how would all the pieces work that way?
You want me to go through the entire financial aid packaging process?
No.
I know the LAO can do that much better than I.
No, but if
I'm not going to go through that for you.
No, but if you're recommending this in 3 or 4 sentences, you ought to be able to tell us what it really does. I just want you to clarify this for us. What does it really do? And I'm asking this question in all the committees. I did this in Human Services yesterday. I'm going to do it in Health this afternoon and Rev and Tax this afternoon. What does it really do?
But Senator Alquist, I'm just going to caution, though, somebody can give an answer to the question. We may disagree with the answer, but I think in all fairness to the witness, the answers, I think, are being provided. So maybe if you can just restate that. Let's try it one more time, give one more response, and then we're going to move on.
Okay. You're saying that everything is going to be handled by the institution to which the student applies. And how does that work with both the high schools, with the federal government, with everything that's involved?
How does that work? The student wants to attend an institute of higher education. They make their application. The financial aid office looks at their eligibility, determines eligibility for a Cal Grant, uses the federal free application, coordinates with the federal government on the applicability for a Pell Grant, other forms of institutional aid, and the decision is made right there about what can be offered in total context to achieve that particular person's financial aid package so they can attend.
Thank you.
Okay. I have
Senator Hancock.
A brief follow-up question, because my concern about decentralizing this function is that it would not be as accessible to a student who has not figured out if they want to go to college or can go to college, or they have not figured out which institution they might wish to attend. And what I have heard from campuses is that mostly the financial aid officers work with students who've already been accepted. And so what if the goal is to give a prospective student or parent an idea if they can afford college at all, and if so, where, the decentralized function would appear to be necessary. So I wonder if you could tell me what would be different? How would this be accomplished under the governor's proposal?
For a student who did not apply on time to go to college, is that what we're talking about?
A young person who just doesn't know if their family can afford it or they can afford it. And so they want to know what's out there for them in general so they can make a decision as to whether they can apply at all, and if so, to which institution.
I think, high school counselors certainly have a role in this. Various outreach programs certainly make students aware that attending college is affordable. They have to take some step to find out what that is, and there's plenty of information available on websites about that. How would this particular proposal change that? I'm not sure it would. There has to be some initiation by a student to attend a college, and if they haven't applied on time for UC, CSU, or a private, they're probably going to be accessing community college where all that information is available.
Okay, I'd just appreciate it if other people could comment on this too, because it's a major concern of mine.
Let's move on. I just want to underscore, and this is a little bit ironic, CPEC has recommended that we do the decentralization. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and CPEC is in support of decentralization, but not necessarily consolidation.
That's correct.
Okay, and so I think it's one thing too. I mean, to sort of an extent, we're looking at, okay, here's CPEC, that's a separate issue of consolidation. But the question earlier was, well, what do you do? I think it's just something to tuck away in the back of our head, that CPEC has actually recommended to the legislature, you know what, one-stop shopping actually is efficient for the students. And so that's something that really motivates me. And personally, I like the decentralization model. But let's go ahead and let's move on, because we've got the LAO and then we've got CSAC and the Education Roundtable, of which CPEC is a part. So let's go over to the LAO.
Thank you. Judy Hyman. It might be helpful in answering Senator Alquist's question to go through a very brief, streamlined conceptual model of how the grant award process currently works. On page 2 of your handout, the decentralization handout from the LAO, you'll see the main steps in the Cal Grant delivery process. Folks have that?
We're on page 2, right?
Okay, yes. And there are many more steps than you see here, but this gives you the general idea. The very first step in the financial aid process is that the student files a FAFSA form, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and that's done online, and it provides information that allows the federal government to determine the student's eligibility for federal aid. And that's also information that the campuses use in determining eligibility for various types of state and institutional aid. So the student files the FAFSA. The high school or college submits a grade point average to CSAC currently, and CSAC matches up the FAFSA data that it receives and the GPA. CSAC can access the federal FAFSA data, matches it up with the GPA, and then checks for prior awards for that student and determines that student's eligibility for all of the different Cal Grant programs. CSAC notifies the student and the campuses that the student indicated on the FAFSA form of that student's eligibility. Concurrently, the campus also receives the FAFSA for students that listed it on the FAFSA form and that it has admitted. And the campus builds a financial aid package for students. Using federal grants, they can determine eligibility, students' eligibility for federal grants with the information that they have, the estimated or preliminary Cal Grant award, other gift aid, institutional grant aid, student loans, and work-study awards. And they put together a package of all these different types of aid to try to meet as much as possible of the student's need. The student receives a financial aid offer from the campus, and ideally from several campuses to which it has, the student has applied and been accepted. Sometimes the Cal Grant award listed on that offer from the campus doesn't match the letter that the student received from CSAC. And in those cases, the student aid commission, the campus financial aid staff all have to work together to resolve the discrepancies. Once that's all sorted out, the campus verifies the student's eligibility for the Cal Grants and other forms of aid, and essentially bills the federal government and the state for those awards, receives the funding, and then pays the student's fees or pays out the stipends to the student. And then after that, there's an audit and reconciliation process. There's extensive use of student rosters between the Student Aid Commission and the campuses to communicate about eligibility and awards made. And there's a financial reconciliation process for advances that the campus has received and audit of all the eligibility documentation and financial accounting. In the administration's proposal, essentially that top block would disappear, the block under the CSAC award process. And you would jump right to the second block of bullets where the campus gets the FAFSA information that the student has filed and takes it from there. So that, I believe, is essentially what this proposal does. Mm-hmm. Under this proposal, the three public segments, the system offices would actually receive the appropriation for these awards and would distribute it to the campuses for their students. And then afterwards, there would be a reconciliation process to move awards to where they were needed. The segments would periodically report on awards to a central office for budgeting and accountability and be subject to audit. So once again, we have a number of policy questions. Would decentralization improve service to students? Currently, campuses award most forms of aid. Campuses award and package federal Pell Grants, federal loans, institutional grants and scholarships, work-study awards, and Cal Grants are the main exception. The student receives that award from the Student Aid Commission in a separate letter. Decentralization would improve service delivery to students by providing that single point of contact, the campus financial aid office, for all aid awards, and also would enable the campuses to give a consolidated financial aid award that didn't just have a preliminary or tentative Cal Grant award, but had the definitive Cal Grant award. And then the students could take those comprehensive offers from different campuses and compare them and make their informed decisions about which campus to attend. Would decentralization limit choices for students? This really gets to Senator Liu's question. And with the current process, a student would not be notified by CSAC of an award unless the student had gone through the process of submitting the FAFSA form to the feds, which is a pretty extensive process. That's a place that the feds and the whole country is looking for simplification. So at this point, it's many hours of work to submit that FAFSA form. So a student who has gotten through that hurdle, hopefully, is really thinking about going to college and what college they would want to go to. Also, a student who submits that form would get communication back from the federal government saying, you qualify for federal aid up to this amount, or we need more information from you. So there would be some communication indicating to the student that there is aid available. I would also agree with the earlier comments that if you're talking about students not even sure about whether they want to apply for college or apply for financial aid, they don't know if they would qualify. That's really an earlier process of outreach, starting in middle school and high school, to make sure that students and their parents have information about what resources are available.
Which is why also on another budget proposal on that outreach proposals for higher ed, that's why I think we have legitimate concern about that.
Mm-hmm. Another concern about decentralization and student choice is, would it limit portability for students? Currently, students can begin at the community college and then can transfer to a 4-year baccalaureate institution, to a 2-year private associate degree institution. They can, another community college, they can take that grant with them. That would still be true under the proposed decentralization. There is no reason that this would reduce portability of Cal Grants. Would decentralization improve the overall efficiency of the Cal Grant process? Mr. Podesto described how it would reduce duplication, and that would improve efficiency. But there are some steps in the process currently that are performed centrally that really are more efficiently performed centrally. And these include tracking utilization, tracking remaining eligibility, statewide reporting, maintaining the grade point average data, and under this proposal, those could still be performed centrally. And then there are some functions, such as audit, that really should be performed centrally for accountability purposes. And again, under this proposal, those would remain as central functions.
And when you say under this proposal, looking at a consolidated, some of these areas would be under the consolidated entity.
Under the governor's decentralization proposal, taking that as a separate proposal, it doesn't presuppose that audits would be decentralized to the campuses or anything like that. So whether you consolidate CSAC into another organization or leave it freestanding, it could retain some central functions. Either CSAC or the successor entity could retain some central functions. Alternatives that you could consider to decentralizing the Cal Grant program would be to change some of the program requirements to improve the efficiency of the award process. For example, some of the great GPA calculation requirements are different for this program than what campuses generally use, and that could add a layer of work for them. The eligibility determination is different. This program uses income and asset ceilings, which is a different approach than the federal need determination process. So there are statutory changes you could make to just simplify the process without decentralizing. And then likewise, you could decentralize some functions, as we've discussed, and leave other functions that are best performed centrally as they are. And then other considerations, some of the roles proposed for the chancellor, the community college chancellor's office in the governor's proposal are really outside of the mission of the community colleges. Administering aid to other segments is really not part of the community college's mission. We also caution that implementation of decentralization would require some lead time, and campuses would incur some costs, but those initial costs would be outweighed by long-term savings. But it would require lead time and careful planning to make sure that students continue to receive aid throughout that process. And that concludes my remarks.
Okay, let's hear from Education Roundtable and CSAC, and then we can open it up for general discussion and concern.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much, Mr. Oakes.
Yes, Robert Oakes with the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities, representing the Education Roundtable. The Roundtable presents their proposal today to you in response to the governor's proposal to initially decentralize the Cal Grant program. This was before his office proposed eliminating Cal Grants altogether. The committee needs to know that in good times or bad, the Roundtable remains committed to improving student access, and this proposal does that. It also, coincidentally, makes administration of the 54-year-old Cal Grant program more efficient and cost-effective for the state. The Education Roundtable's support for its collaboratively creative proposal for decentralization of Cal Grant would not change even if the state had a budget surplus. Simply put, decentralization is the right thing to do for taxpayers, for state government, for the segments of higher education, and, most importantly, for the students and their families. The merit of decentralization should be separate and apart from budget discussions. As you know, often doing the right thing results in improved service and a better use of taxpayer dollars. The members of the Education Roundtable have explored decentralization and conclude that it is the right thing to do. The budget savings are, to quote one of my favorite characters, Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. Fundamental to the Roundtable's proposal is the assumption that an independent state agency would continue to administer the Cal Grant program, including the distribution of grant funds, the auditing of institutions for compliance, and the collection of data for assessment and budget projection purposes. Placing this function under any office that is not focused on the interest of access to higher education is a non-starter for the Roundtable. We do not support abolishing an independent commission or agency for higher education, and we reject dividing the funds among the segments before they are distributed to students. The focus must be on students, not on institutions. Focusing resources closer to the students must be the goal of decentralization. Simply put, those things that are targeted toward individual students should be administered by their attending college. Those things that address students globally, such as statewide outreach efforts, like the Education Roundtable's collaborative website, californiacolleges.edu, which has a whole bunch of information about costs to attend college for students, those types of things should be state administered on a statewide basis. This statewide coordination will assure that the broadest range of students and their families know about their higher education opportunities. The Roundtable's decentralization proposal simplifies the college admission process. It should reduce administrative costs. In fact, some of those costs will be shifted to and absorbed by the four-year institutions. But the four-year institutions are okay with that because it serves students better, as financial aid packages are ultimately provided by those institutions in the first place. You have before you a two-page summary of the Roundtable's proposal, and attached to that proposal are two schematics. If you look at the schematics, it doesn't take a college degree from one of our institutions to notice that the decentralization proposal that we offer simplifies the process. It is in that simple elegance that administrative savings for the state are realized and improved service delivery to the students is achieved. This proposal is a result of the segments of higher education in this state coming together and, in the spirit of service to the students, figuring out a system that improves the delivery of a public service in the most efficient, least confusing way possible. That collaboration is further demonstrated by the willingness of the four-year segments to forego new awards of the competitive Cal Grant program and redirecting those awards to students at community colleges. This will save the state money while encouraging students to pursue either transfer or workforce development skills at the community colleges. In short, the members of the Roundtable are putting their money where their mouth is in supporting this proposal. You might have heard that not all of the members of the Education Roundtable support this proposal, as one of them did not sign the letter of support. That's true. One member did not sign the letter of support. That member represents the K-12 segment, and the K-12 segment is not affected by this proposal and therefore did not take a stand.
So otherwise it's unanimous?
It is unanimous. The federal government successfully administers the Pell program in much the same way that the Roundtable is proposing the administration of California's Cal Grant program. At a time when government efficiency and student aid are priorities of the federal government, the state should mirror that national effort to maximize benefit to the taxpayers and to the students. The Roundtable supports that effort because it is the most efficient way to serve California students and their families. Finally, Dean Kulju from the CSU Chancellor's Office is here today, and he graciously provided the charts, and he is available for any technical questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's hear from CSAC, and then we can open it up for discussion comments. Mr. Emerson?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, no question about it. And my former colleague, there's a belief that the Student Aid Commission opposes decentralization or any proposal. Nothing could be further from the truth. What we have done over the last several months, 6 months, is meet with folks in higher education, meet with financial aid communities, and I take it. I'm thinking about this. I take exception. I can't speak. Too nervous. K through 12 is not affected. We have 70,000, 80,000 students, high school seniors, who got award letters, who were told now that their Cal Grants aren't going to be available. They cut the entire program. Seniors in high school are our constituencies, K through 11, K through 10. I mean, where's the cutoff? My frustration is that we oppose proposals that fail to be deliberative, thoughtful, and inclusive. There are proposals before you that contain or don't contain our input. The Commission has more than 100 years of combined experience in delivering financial aid in California, yet we have not been consulted once. There is no deference paid to the giants of this legislative body who crafted the Cal Grant program and the Student Aid Commission. The Commission believes it is quite possible to achieve efficiencies. CSAC has been meeting with folks for months and has the expertise to deliver financial aid in California for the last 54 years. The University of California, California State University, and the community colleges argue that their institutions are best suited to directly award Cal Grants to students admitted to their institutions. In the face of staggering cuts, they have assured you that they will absorb costs. One idea we propose would be to award Cal Grants by individual institutions, phasing it in over the years, choosing to revamp their financial aid systems while protecting those centralized functions of the Commission that are critical to meeting student needs. A critical feature of the Cal Grant program, a feature that has greatly increased opportunities for California's most vulnerable students, is the fact that Cal Grants are portable. A student can take his or her Cal Grant from one institution to another. Changing institutions of higher education does not risk the loss of their financial aid. A centralized system for for tracking students in Cal Grant awards remains necessary to maintain fiscal integrity of the Cal Grant program. One proposal posits a plan to remove the state's ability or the Commission's ability to track student applications for federal and state aid. At a time when California students must answer President Obama's call to attend at least 1 year of education or career training beyond high school, California would remove the ability to track and account for our progress. The U.S. Department of Education has sent clear signals the future of funding to states will require centralized systems of tracking and reporting data. Furthermore, the Commission is a research partner in an ongoing national $3 million financial aid study which relies on the completion of the free application for federal student aid, known as the FAFSA. It will produce powerful research findings that will inform both public and private sectors, and under decentralization, California policymakers, institutions, and students would not benefit from this study. This partnership between the California Student Aid Commission, College Access Foundation, MDRC, and the Gates Foundation represent an innovative investment of federal, state, and private resources to increase financial aid for low-income California students. Additionally, the College Access Foundation of California has awarded $2.9 million in grant money to support nearly 2,800 college scholarships for low-income California residents who apply for a Cal Grant. These scholarships are awarded to the California Cash for College program. As to efficiencies, under the Commission's centralized system, a student need file only one statutorily required Cal Grant application. Additionally, a student or a student's high school only need file a student's grade point average only one time. Maintaining these centralized functions will ensure our students aren't burdened with multiple applications and that our high schools aren't saddled with additional unnecessary paperwork at a time when their budget's under enormous stress. The campus's concerns and communication is devoted to their students, and rightly so. The Commission's concerns and communication is focused on all students of California, and rightly so. Under decentralization, tens of thousands of low-income and first-generation students will not receive any notification from an institution regarding their aid eligibility unless they have been accepted to that institution. Finally, specialized programs such as the Chafee Foster Youth and Apple Grant programs should continue to be processed by the Commission because they are integrated into the Commission's grant delivery system. The Governor's proposal overstates savings and understates costs. Any decentralization proposal will require increased costs for computer programming to maintain tracking of all students. Additional costs will be incurred to modify the existing centralized system, and the highlight or low light of proposals before you is that there's no look to revenue, and especially in terms of the student loan program. President Obama is currently changing the delivery of the student loan program for the entire United States. There is revenue which has been used by the state of California over the last 5, 6, 7 years in the amount of $350 million to offset general fund revenue to support the Cal Grant program. It's not in any of these proposals. Any change to the administration of financial aid in California should be in the interest of improving services to students. In point of fact, the interests of students in California demand a more cogent analysis and unintended consequences with input from all parties before drastically altering the delivery of $800 million in financial aid. For more than 50 years, the Student Aid Commission has disseminated information and hope. The Commission urges you to put students ahead of appearances and to ensure the access to higher education that will keep California on the leading edge for generations to come. Thank you, and I'm happy to refer any questions to my colleagues who know way more than me.
Okay, thank you. I notice we have a CPEC representative here at the table. Would you like to just comment? I think it was Finance or LAO mentioned that there was a 2003 CPEC study which recommended that Cal Grants be decentralized. Could you speak briefly on that in this proposal?
Yes, thank you, Chair Romero. Well, Senators. As a response to supplemental report language, CPEC convened a large group of stakeholders, including CSAC, the systems, students, and the like, to put together recommendations on alternative delivery systems for Cal Grants, and recommended the decentralization as a plan. That recommendation also envisioned a transitional process with changes in statute and more deliberation on the issue. The Commission in March reiterated those findings, and we found that the process the higher education systems have been involved with, that Mr. Oaks described, really meets that threshold. It was consultative, it was deliberative. Our Commission supports that proposal to decentralize Cal Grants. We would note that both the 2003 report and our current recommendation, as has been stated by the other speakers, does not envision eliminating the entire state centralized system. There would certainly need to be functions that are maintained at the state level. We would also note, as the CSAC speaker had mentioned, financial aid in California has evolved from 1955 through now. I don't think anybody sitting at this table thinks that the decentralization proposal on the table now is the end-all, be-all. We do feel it's a reasonable, workable plan that will evolve with the good faith of all the parties involved, and we do support it.
Okay. And that position was reiterated last March?
In this last March as part of our budget recommendations, yes.
Okay, so just one point for us to consider. 2003 CPEC recommended, I don't know if the legislature and the finance ignored you for 6 years, but we're hearing it again, and maybe this is the time to finally hear what CPEC recommended 6 years ago, and we say it even as we, I know there's two parts to this. There's the consolidation and decentralization, but at least on the decentralization, CPEC is saying, we told you 6 years ago, maybe you'll listen now. All right. Questions or comments from committee members? Senator Hancock.
I have a question. If we were to decentralize the Cal Grants, and, my concern would continue to be, actually it was expressed in a letter that we just received from the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, saying that only students admitted to college would receive communication about financial aid awards. And we may say that, well, that will leave it up to the segments and to the private post-secondary institutions to do the outreach, but it is disturbing to me. It seems to indicate a cutback in information. And unfortunately, many of the high schools in my district, I have several districts with schools under great financial stress. They just don't have high school counselors that do much more than, say, go to the FAFSA. They have, one high school counselor for several thousand young people. So I'm concerned about how information's going to get out. But if we were to decentralize, it would seem to me it would leave the Student Aid Commission with basically only a data collection function. And my question would be, why would that not be better located in the Department of Education? Because it is a K-12 concern, it seems to me, to make sure that that outreach is done, and that would be perhaps a better place for it to be located.
Let me speak to the outreach piece that you mentioned. The communication that students receive now from the Student Aid Commission it's euphemistically called the CAR, and it is a letter that tells them that they are awarded financial aid. That letter is only generated to those students who have filled out a FAFSA. There is a lot of other information, outreach information that must take place and that does take place and that we completely support and would not support any elimination of that. What many of our financial aid administrators tell us is that the dual communication from the CAR saying that they have an award and a notice from the institution creates a great deal of confusion because the Student Aid Commission, the Cal Grant, is only one piece of their package. So you already had to have completed the FAFSA in order to have that communication. Our challenge, all the segments, is getting students to complete the FAFSA in the first place. And that information, we completely support statewide efforts and best practices among the regions in the state to assure that students do receive that kind of information. And we would absolutely oppose anything that would eliminate would in any way discourage access to information about how to apply for financial aid. We're aware financial aid is, in study after study after study, parents and families say it is the financial aid piece that is the biggest barrier for us understanding what we're trying to do. The California Colleges website has 9 different financing scenarios at every segment of higher education. So it says if your mother earns $50,000 a year and she's a single parent raising 3 children and you rent your house, this is the type of package you might expect at these institutions. If at a private institution, at a public CSU, at a UC, at the community colleges. We try very, very hard to provide that kind of information, and we would continue to support every outreach effort to make sure that people apply for aid. And in fact, on the California Colleges website, you can then apply, fill out the FAFSA online.
Senator,
yes.
Were you concluded?
Well, I wanted to, that was just as to the outreach component piece, and I want to be very clear that for us that is a separate piece from decentralization of the administration of the awarding of the grants.
Senator Ahlquist.
Thank you. Although I think the Student Aid Commission does a very good job, I would be open to some kind of work in decentralization for Cal Grants. And 2 or 3 things I need to say. Many, many years ago when I chaired the Assembly Higher Education Committee, I had a bill on FAFSA to see that the schools actually allowed students to take the FAFSA in high school. And I am truly concerned about the piece of those students who, I'm the daughter of a Greek immigrant, first in my family to go to college. There are children like that today, and they just don't know what to do. And if you don't know the right question, I think the schools need to take a greater role, K through 12. And as a former high school math teacher and a former K through 12 guidance counselor, what are we going to do? So I would be open. I mean, CPAC has some proposals. LAO, I think we need a lot more discussion, but certainly I would be open to a recommendation to say that we would pursue this. But at the same time, I need to feel comfortable that there's going to be a component in high school to see that students who want to take the FAFSA truly have that opportunity.
Yes, that actually does get to the point.
And the bill that I had never got out of the legislature.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Many years ago.
I'm also first generation college graduate. That actually gets to the point that you raised about whether this should go with the Department of Education. The roundtable has no preference who the administering agency should be. But, we are open to different things, but we do agree that it needs to be an independent body. And definitely some of the functions of what is currently CSAC would be changed, but there are still certain statewide functions that need to be maintained, and they do need to be maintained by an agency that is independent and has student access as its best interest, and we're completely open and willing to have the discussions about where that be.
If I could just ask, why does it have to be independent? It seems like it's a process that's understood, and any public agency should be open to the public in a way. I don't understand why the insistence on independence in this particular case. It's not a policy body.
Well, the independence is in response to the governor's proposal, which proposes placing it in the Secretary of Education's office, and the governor's office has proposed elimination of the Cal Grant program. So we are looking for an independent agency whose interests are only student access to higher education. And if that is a policy decision, but that's why the independence needs to be there. The other part of the proposal that we reject is that the way the money gets distributed under the governor's proposal, it actually pits segment against segment for those funds. And that's not really where the debate should be, is a student worthy without regard to where that student goes, not, gee whiz, the CSU is going to try to get this amount of Cal Grant money versus the UC versus the independents. It's a fight that would inevitably happen, and the only people who would be harmed in that fight are students.
So would you think, then, that locating it in the California Department of Education, because it does have an independently elected head, and it does have a mission of achieving high standards for all students, and therefore an interest, it would seem to me, in making sure that Cal Grants are fully utilized by all kids. Meet your criteria?
Well, I can't say that it meets the criteria. I can say that it's not a deal killer and that it is something that we're willing to discuss.
Okay. LAO and then CSAC.
Just to add to the discussion about where you might locate this, I'm not aware of any models in which that function is located in the K through 12 department. There are a number of states, however, that house their centralized financial aid administration in their higher education coordinating boards. Some examples of those are Texas, Washington, Minnesota, and Virginia.
CSAC. That would indicate that if we consolidated these two organizations but kept them in under one independent entity and decentralized the Cal Grants, that we could realize savings, maintain the independence.
And there are models for that.
And there are models for that. Thank you.
And maybe again, too, you could provide us some of those more specific models as we go forth. CSAC.
I'm concerned that the basis for a lot of this discussion is on a study that's over 5 years old. It's sort of like a stock tip from 2003.
However, they said that they had reiterated this, reaffirmed it in March, which is just a few months ago, as I recall from
In 2003, I felt like you should buy Red Hat stock. I mean, the world has changed drastically and dramatically in the last 5 years. All we're saying, decentralization makes sense at some level. Putting the Cal Grants into campuses makes sense. What is not being done, and in the half hour, 45 minutes, hour that we have here, among the many other things that you have on your plates, is comprehensive analysis. Everybody in this room has a tendency, I should say more correctly, to think that I'm smarter than everybody else in the room. And when you get in a meeting as the Education Roundtable, there's no high school segment in there. I mean, I go back again to high school counselors who are, probably the front line. I mean, students make up their mind their junior and senior year. Who talks to those folks? Where's their input into this proposal? The axiom, Robert had an axiom, my axiom is don't cut me, don't cut you, don't cut me, cut that man behind the tree. In the world of shifting alliances, it's difficult sometimes to see where folks come down and why. We believe at CSAC that a thorough discussion, that more sophisticated finance analysis, revenue analysis, those things are yet to be done.
Okay, let me go ahead and wrap up. I am going to say, though, there have been some rather substantive discussions on this issue over a number of years. We also had, I think, a rather, comprehensive discussion in the Budget Subcommittee. So at least three of us have already heard a number of these issues, and certainly there's been consultation. That is separate and apart from the intensive staff meetings that have taken place as well. So I do not believe, with all due respect, that this has been, that any one of you, quite frankly, has never been consulted. There have been long-standing discussions. All right, having said that, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Let's go ahead, let's move into public comment. At this point, if you wish to speak, please line up and let's go ahead and hear from you. I'm going to limit each speaker. Well, let's see how many show up. Go ahead and have a seat at the table.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and let's start. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. I'm Antonio Reveles, Director of College and Financial Aid Counseling at Bell High School. And I am one of those college counselors that's not consulted sometimes. Just to give you a little background, I've been a college counselor for 16 years. I serve a student body of 4,500 students at a year-round high school, 98% Hispanic, 95% dependent on the federal lunch program, as well as Title I. I hold several memberships, such as the one in the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, the Western Association of College Admissions Counseling, and I'm also on the executive board of the College Counselor Organization of Los Angeles. I am also a direct beneficiary of the Student Aid Commission and of Cal Grant B. that's what helped pay for my college. And I'm very proud to say that I did receive financial aid because it gave me the incentive to give back. Okay? I'm here to address the issues of decentralizing the California Student Aid Commission from the perspective of school counseling. First and foremost, decentralizing the Student Aid Commission would be a major mistake. This agency is not one of bureaucracy, but it's rather a highly effective office that directly serves the needs of students and parents. In the case of LAUSD, the majority of students are first-generation college students. Therefore, as counselors, we must act in loco parentis to inform, encourage, support, and protect our students. In our daily task, CSAC plays a critical role. CSAC helps provide the pathway to funding for higher education for our students. And it does it in 3 ways. First is the information piece. You have all talked about information here. This agency produces hard copy and web copy information that we use all the time. Second thing, the information is accurate and updated constantly. Third, it sets the standards for the higher education institutions to use. It doesn't have a target audience in the sense of the UCs will focus on something. The Cal State will focus on something else. The private colleges will focus on something else. And then community colleges will focus on their own thing. That's 4 different systems with over 300 institutions involved. Okay? And that's something very important to take into account because, again, the agency does this in a non-biased way. You've heard about those students that are underserved, those students that are self-initiated. You know, those parents ask 1,000 questions. So again, second thing is the process. The process is very important for Cal Grants because it directly involves us, the high school personnel. We have to go through the process. We get trained properly. And if decentralization takes place, then who's going to conduct that and keep us in the loop? See, what everybody forgets is that the student and the parent are a major client.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to wrap up because we've got a long line.
I will. Just give me 2 more points, okay? 2 more points. And so that's our client, and we serve them on a daily basis, so we have to answer those questions. And they keep us in the loop by providing all the information we need.
Sir, I'm going to go ahead and stop you at this point. Thank you very much. If you've got anything in writing, please submit it to us.
Okay. Thank you very much for considering what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
My name is Valerie Garcia. I am the Program Advisor for Guardian Scholars Program at UC Davis, which is a program for former foster youth. I'm also representing California College Pathways, which is a consortium of programs like what I run among the colleges in California. And it's not so much that we have we support one or the other. It's that we would like for you to consider or have consider very closely is the Chafee Grant administration as part of the CSAC and what's going to happen to it, who's going to administer it, and very closely have the importance of knowing that the program is going to be run more efficiently than it currently is, and also how is the consortium that I belong to, as well as the specific programs, how can we provide that feedback as to who's going to run it? Because as we see, if we decentralize it, it's going to be contracted out. Well, how does that look like? How would the efficiency look like in providing that? As we know, foster youth, former foster youth that actually make it to college, as we look in the AB 167, 3% of the foster youth actually make it to college. And of that, how many actually are graduating, which is I think even of those, 1 to 2%. And a lot of it has to do with financial concerns. So our concern is to consider not so much supporting one way or another, but taking to close consideration how the Chafee Grant, as part of the CSAC, decentralizing that, how is that going to be considered, and where are we going to look at, and how we can provide that feedback for you.
Okay, thank you. Next witness.
I'm Dr. Pat Hurley. I'm the Associate Dean at Glendale Community College, and I'm here representing CASFA, the State Financial Aid Association, representing over 1,600 financial aid officers. We are concerned about some of the operational issues and would like you to consider them as you are looking at the various proposals before you. There are some things that do require some centralization, as have been mentioned in the prior statements. First of all, the Cal Grant is limited to 8 semesters, and somehow that would have to be tracked, particularly for students that transfer from one institution or one segment to another. There would have to be some way to determine if students were not getting 2 grants at 2 different institutions that they happen to be attending at the same time, which happens among community colleges and some students that attend a Cal State and a community college during different parts of in the same semester. We have the Cal Grant calculation. For some of our segments, that will not be a problem because that's part of their admissions practice. For other segments, such as community colleges and proprietary schools, they do not collect Cal Grant GPAs. And there would have to be some means for them to be able to get the GPA information from the high schools. We are concerned if the competitive Cal Grants survive, that is a rather complex calculation to determine eligibility. It's based on scoring in a matrix and something that not all of the campuses would be able to do given their different levels of computer services. And that may not be an issue, but if the competitive grants survive, then we believe that it might be. The issue of outreach was mentioned. We partner with the Student Aid Commission in providing workshops on financial aid to the high school counselors throughout the state. They come because it is sponsored by a state agency, and we would certainly hope that that effort would continue. We certainly hope that whatever the outcome is, that the Cal Grant program continues to remain a student-centered program and not an institutionally based program. We do not want to. We could not support a program that did not make funds available to a student just because the institutional allocation had run out if that student were eligible for funds.
Okay. Thank you. Next witness.
My name is Brad Hardison. I am the president of the California Community College Student Financial Aid Administrators Association, and we represent the financial aid administrators at the California Community College system. Just in brevity, I will just mention that we will distribute copies of a letter that we previously sent to some of you, but not all of you, because not all of you are on the budget committees. We also agree on a hybrid model that's been discussed today, where there obviously have to be a centralized depository for grade point averages, because the community colleges are not required to collect GPAs. Also, tracking the utilization would have to be done at a centralized level, so the awards are portable. So that's an important part of us. As was mentioned by Dr. Hurley, the competitive program becomes kind of problematic and we do hope it does survive, and it may need to be done in a centralized way because it would be difficult to try to do scoring on a campus-based level, and so that's a consideration. So there are some things obviously that are better done centralized, some things are done decentralized. We do agree that the award letter should be a comprehensive award letter that comes from the colleges and includes all financial aid awards, not just one award. We think there's a benefit to that. And we also, the other speaker mentioned about the Chafee Grant. We do have concerns about specialized programs like the Chafee Grant, and to make sure if that program is given to some other entity that they are accountable and that those awards are delivered in a timely manner. That's been a problem in the past, and we want to make sure that our foster youth get those awards when they should get those.
Thank you very much. And if you will also be sure to give your letter out to all members of the committee, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you. Next
Madam
witness.
Chair, members of the committee, Scott Governor on behalf of the accredited out-of-state colleges and universities in California. We don't understand, given the budget constraints facing the community colleges today, how they can simply absorb 30% more competitive grant, the distribution of those to the private institutions. That doesn't make any sense to us, given, again, the fiscal constraints. So we are concerned about the process of decentralization.
But the community colleges is not in opposition to this proposal.
Well, they simply said they would absorb it, and we need to see how that would be done, because I've seen before the legislature saying they are having fiscal concerns, and that's not an insignificant administrative process. The second point I'd like to raise is the roundtable inferred that this was kind of done unanimously among the higher education segments. That is actually inaccurate. It did not include kind of the private post-secondary institutions, the non-WASC institutions in the process. And as a result, while While they suggest that all students will be treated the same under the proposal in terms of the elimination of the competitive grants, or rather the diversion to community colleges, in fact, that proposal will eliminate competitive grants for adult learners. Please be clear, they will not qualify for competitive grants unless they go to a community college. Currently, if a student wants to attend a private post-secondary institution, they do not, an adult learner, they do not qualify for entitlement grants because those have to be used within 1 year of their high school graduation. But if an adult wants to go to a trade school, re-career, retrain, or they need a degree to get a promotion, they will not qualify for a Cal Grant under the roundtable proposal. We object to that. We think that if there are going to be cuts, it should apply across the board to all students, and you shouldn't simply eliminate grants for adult learners, which is what that proposal does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Erica Romero with the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. Just 2 points. Number one, we know that only 30% of Latino students use financial aid grants, and that's in large part because of a lack of financial aid awareness, so we'd be concerned about anything that puts a program under direct political pressure. We know the last 3 years our office has been open. There have been proposed cuts every single year to financial aid awareness, and we want an entity that can stand up for the importance of those programs. And then secondly, the placement of the private Cal Grant awards under the community colleges. The community colleges are already overburdened, and their priority shouldn't be those students at a private institution. So we need somebody who's focused on those students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
My name is Carol Mills, and I'm a counselor at Luther Burbank High School in South Sacramento. And I have 3 concerns at this point. One is the dissemination of accurate and up-to-date information to all of the high schools and all the staff people that actually work with the high school students. CSAC's been doing that for us. I need to know that will continue to happen. Second point, we actually send electronically the GPAs for our seniors to the state to be used in terms of awarding the Cal Grant, and I would truly like to know exactly where that will go in the future. Will that be a central place that we send all these GPAs, or are we going to, distribute GPAs to the UC system, the CSU, whatever? And the third point that I'd like to make has to do with the CAR, which is the notification that lets the student know how much of the Cal Grant they have been awarded for their top 3 choices of colleges that they wish to attend. Colleges send out award letters for financial aid at various times. Some of my students don't have financial aid packages until July and August. At least if they receive the CAR, they know how much Cal Grant they would receive if, say, they went to Berkeley, or say they went to Sac State, or for whatever reason they chose to go to, say, St. Mary's, a private college. Without the CAR, they won't have that. They'll have to wait for each individual financial aid award letter. And most colleges have a May 1 commit date for our students to let them know whether or not they will be attending in the fall. We need a better way than students waiting for their financial aid packages. Unless the colleges want to do them sooner, we need a better way to notify students what their awards are and what possible amount of money they would get at each different college that they've chosen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dean Cooley. I'm with the CSU Chancellor's Office. I'm the Director of Student Financial Aid Programs. Just a general comment. I think if you really look at the roundtable proposal, it addresses the majority of the concerns brought up by the various segments. I did want to comment specifically on outreach, which is coming up a lot. That is not the sole purvey and domain of CSAC. Our segment, we do counselor conferences. We have some parent programs in the early grades. So it's a companion piece. That's not the only source thereof. And in our proposal, they're still maintaining that role. Also, I think it's a bit of an urban myth that only admitted students get award notices. Many institutions will send a preliminary award as they're moving through the admissions process. And lastly, I'm getting kind of the sense that financial aid administrators are these heartless bureaucrats looking to grind things out. We're at the street level. I'm a former practitioner. I've been in this role for a year and a half. We're at the street level, seeing the students, seeing what's going on, working in churches, doing all kinds of outreach, and it's not about, decentralization. Is about what's best for students and really getting things as efficient as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Robert. Madam Chair, members, George Miller on behalf of Argosy University and the Art Institutes of California, two accredited institutions whose students, many of whom rely on the competitive grants, and I won't repeat everything that Scott said, but the average age of our students is 27 years old. They're working individuals who are availing themselves of the opportunity to get those Cal grants, get the competitive grants, and further their education, many of whom are trying to stay just ahead of the layoffs, many of whom are trying to retool in the event that they have to find other work or to further the career that they're currently in. The community college system is a great system, but it doesn't fit everyone, and it doesn't fit the times and the needs and the places of everyone, and we would just implore you to please keep the competitive grants as they are, and to the extent that the Cal Grant program, that there is a cut in funding, as the Pro Tem said yesterday, that it is a level cut, that all people are affected equally. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Robert Johnson, California Association of Private Post-Secondary Schools. We represent a large number of proprietary schools in California, from small mom and pops to very large institutions. We certainly are sensitive to the issues of the decentralization and all of the budget issues that are essentially tendent to that. Our concerns basically are around the kind of the details, and we hope that as the unofficial fifth segment of the higher education community in California, we are not formal members of the roundtable, so we are not privileged to those kinds of discussions, and we do hope that the committee will take it upon itself to distribute more detailed plans as they emerge. We certainly look forward to commenting on those as they come available. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other witnesses? Okay, we've come to the conclusion then of our informational hearing and our public comment. Questions or comments from committee members? Senator Hancock?
Good job. Just as the letter goes forward to the Pro Tem, could some of us review it? Just because I think there were a lot of important issues raised about the savings, where we might locate a combined institution where we don't want one, whether it should be independent, the importance of independence. But thank you very much, Madam Chair. You did a great job presenting the information.
Thank you. What we'll do is we'll ask committee staff to basically draft. Remember, this is not an action item, but we did want to consider various implications for policy. So what committee staff will do is draft various issues of concern, summaries from the witnesses, and we will go ahead and forward that on to the Pro Tem and the Conference Committee. Senator Ahlquist.
Yes, I'd like to commend the chair, Senator Romero, for running a really good meeting and for the open dialogue. As I mentioned early on, I would be opposed to CPEC really changing. I mean, there may be some efficiencies to be gained, but it needs to remain. It needs to have its autonomy to do the kind of great job that it has done for decades. On the decentralization, I would be open to looking at that. I'm truly concerned about high school students, all of whom need to know what opportunities are available to them for, higher education, and that really is an important piece of the pie in terms of what occurs there.
Okay. Thank you. Others? Senator Huff? All right. Thank you so very much. This hearing is now concluded.